Okay, last video. Oh, wrong thing. Okay. So the purpose of a sample is to give us information about a larger population. So the process of drawing conclusions about a population on the basis of a sample is called inference, because we're going to infer about the population from which we draw a sample and survey from. Okay. So why should we rely on random sampling? Well, one, we need to eliminate bias in selecting our samples, okay? So it's still unlikely that results from a simple random sample are exactly the same as the entire population. Sample results like the unemployment rate obtained they're only estimates from the truth about your population. It's never 100% the same. If we select two random samples from your same population, you're almost certainly going to choose different individuals. So the sample results will differ somewhat just by chance. Properly designed samples avoid systematic bias, okay? But their results are rarely exactly correct, and we expect them to vary from sample to sample. Okay. So why can we trust random samples? So the results of random sampling don't change haphazardly from sample to sample. Because we deliberately use chance, the results obey the laws of probability that govern the chance behavior. So the laws allow us to say how likely is it that a sample results are close to the truth about the actual population. The second reason is random sampling is that the laws of probability allow trustworthy inference about your population. So results from random samples come with a margin of error that sets bounds on the size of the likely error. But now we're getting into much further down the line, so we'll stop there. Another point that is definitely important to make, and again also revisited later, is that the larger the random samples are, the better information that they give you. It's you could think of it as making sense that the more you have, the closer it is to your actual population. So the closer your results would be to your actual population results. Okay. So let's talk now about sample surveys and what can go wrong. So this isn't necessarily that it was set up wrong, that it was set up for a bias situation to occur. Okay, this is more like it could be an okay sampling method that you had, but just things can happen, things can go wrong. Okay, one of those things is going to be undercoverage. Okay, undercoverage occurs when some members of the population cannot be chosen in a sample. So most samples suffer from some degree of undercoverage. A sample survey of households, for example, will miss out on not only homeless people, but also people in prison, and students possibly in dorms that may not have a landline, or anybody else that may not have a landline at this point. An opinion poll conducted by calling landline telephone numbers will miss households that only have cell phones, right? Or miss out on households that just don't have a phone at all. The results of a national sample survey, therefore, have some bias due to undercoverage, okay, if people are not covered from the rest of the population. Well-designed sample surveys avoid bias in the sampling process. The real problems do generally start after the sample is chosen. One of the most serious sources of bias in sample survey is non-response. So non-response occurs when an individual chosen for the sample can't be contacted or just refuses to participate. Non-response to surveys often exceeds 50%, even with careful planning and several follow-up calls. If the people who respond differ from those who don't in a way that is related to the response, bias results. You will get bias results. Okay. So careful with the use of the word voluntary response. It's kind of you're putting together two ideas. Um, either it's a non-response because the people did not respond to the survey, okay, or the survey was voluntary. So they chose to call up and participate. It wasn't a sake that they didn't respond. Those people chose to participate. The others chose not to participate. That's not the same as non-response. Non-response is they were chosen, but they did not respond. And that's it. Nope, it's not. Sorry, I missed the last. Two more things. Okay. Okay, so gender, race, age, ethnicity, or behavior of the interviewer can also affect people's responses. Okay, so another type of non-sampling problem occurs when people give inaccurate answers to survey questions. So people may lie about their age, their income, or uh, something else, their weight. Okay, they may misremember also how many hours they spent doing homework. Students may have forgotten how much homework that they actually, or a time that they actually spent on their homework. Okay, so a systematic pattern of inaccurate answers in a survey will lead to a response bias. Okay. So the last thing that we have to talk about is the wording of questions. So the wording of questions is the most important influence on the answers given to a sample survey. So confusing or leading questions can introduce strong bias. Changes in wording can greatly affect a survey's outcome. Okay, so just to keep going with that. So, okay, so let's say that an opinion poll asked, should illegal immigrants be prosecuted or deported for being in the U.S. illegally, or shouldn't they? Okay, so after the poll, it's 69% favored deportation. But when the very same sample was asked whether illegal immigrants who have worked in the United States for 2 years should be given the chance to keep their jobs and eventually apply for legal status, now 62% said that they should. So different questions give quite different impressions of attitudes towards the illegal immigrants. So the way that you say it, also they'll say like the order in which you say it too, can have a lot of effect on how people answer. And that is it.